getting into entrepreneurship and marketing started very early. I was definitely the one doing lemonade stands, and that eventually got bigger.
That's Dan Page. He's responsible for taking Scroll from a startup to a 7-figure agency in less than 2 years. Using his digital marketing skills, he's been able to help some companies drive 22 million impressions and 15 million organic views. How did he do it?
Pick 3 channels that you want to own and to be really, really good at, and stick to those and nail those. And once you're done mastering, nailing those, keep going and keep doing those things, and then bring somebody in that can then be strategic in another area.
His innovative strategies have not just fueled the success of Scroll, but have ignited a revolution in how digital marketing agencies support small businesses.
Right now, Scroll has been transitioning pretty majorly, pivoting who our ideal client is. We're transitioning to only serving other agencies.
But what drives a leader like Dan to constantly innovate and push the boundaries of marketing? And where does he see the future of digital marketing going?
I think it's going in 2 directions. And what I mean by that is,
in today's episode, we're joined by Dan Page. Dan currently serves as a COO at Scroll, where he has been instrumental in bootstrapping the agency from 0 to 7 figures in less than 2 years. His leadership has shaped the development of all processes and procedures, significantly contributing to the success of over 300 small businesses through strategic paid and organic digital marketing. In addition to his role at Scroll, Dan is also a board member at Davis Technical College, as well as the founder and photographer at Dan Page Photography. Over the years, his role has spanned many industries, including agency strategy director at the LDS Business College and marketing manager for the Everything Food Conference, where he organically drove over 15 million views and 22 million impressions. Dan's passion for digital marketing extends to his role as a host of the Scrolls Session podcast, where he shares practical tips on starting and growing businesses while he also interviews industry leaders and successful entrepreneurs. Dan's dedication to building a wildly different agency outlook is truly inspiring. Join us as we dive into his journey, strategies, and the impact he has made in the world of digital marketing. Welcome to the show, Dan.
thanks, Eli. Really pumping me up there. I love it.
That's kind of the goal, man. Like you've had a pretty awesome career, and you've done some pretty amazing things over the last couple of years. And I'm real excited to really dig in and learn a little bit more about you, as well as what you're working on and where you see the future going. So if we jump right into it, let's learn a little bit about who Dan is. So where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be when you were little? Let's learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, you bet. So born and raised Kaysville, Utah. Just north of Salt Lake City. It's about 15 minutes north of Salt Lake. Anyone that lives south of Salt Lake would probably consider it Idaho. We get so many people that are like, your office is up in Kaysville and Layton? Isn't that Idaho? Like, no one even knows where it is, which is so funny if you live in Utah. But that's where I grew up. I went to Davis High. And I was very, very involved in high school, junior high. Had just an amazing, solid friend group. Had amazing parents that I feel like really shaped me to who I am today. Like, no doubt about it. And the friend group that I had, all of us were very, I feel like, motivated, entrepreneurial minded. We're very positive influences on each other. And I feel like that shaped my entrepreneur journey. And getting into entrepreneurship and business and marketing started very early. Like, I was definitely the one out there doing lemonade stands, selling things to friends. And that eventually got bigger in junior high when I started a recycling business. And this was like the first business that I had started. I started a recycling business to help pay for a band trip. I was in band, and my particular band was invited to an invitational in Indianapolis to compete. And my parents said, we're not paying for it. You have to get the money yourselves, as smart parents do. Yeah. And, I tried to figure out a way to make that money. And I looked for a need at the time. Kaysville City didn't have a recycling program. There wasn't one in Davis County, but there was a recycling plant where you could drop off stuff and make money in Layton. And so I decided, hey, this is a good opportunity. Maybe I will, send out some flyers, make a flyer. I will pick up people's recycling, newspapers, plastic, metal, and I will drop it off at the plant, and I'll make money every month from my customers, and I'll also make money when I drop it off at the plant. So this ended up working out really good. And my poor mom drove me around, all during that year. And I kept that business going for a couple of years until Kaysville City, Davis County came out with their own recycling program, and that shut me down. But
oh man,
that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, and definitely shaped by, I feel like, where I grew up, who I grew up around, and my parents, no doubt about it.
That's pretty awesome. So you feel like are most of your friend group, are they entrepreneurs now?
A lot of them are. Either have their own businesses. When I got into either have their own businesses, or they're photographers or in content. I had, I think, a knack, I guess, for creativity and photography. I always loved drawing, always loved taking photos. And I got into photography in high school, and that became a little more serious after high school when I started my own business. Went on my mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to London, came home, ended up working for the same church as a photographer for about a year. And after that, decided to go out on my own and have my own business. You can see some of those photos behind me. I've always loved landscape photography. I got to do a lot of travel early on in my career. And that, kind of spinballed into portraiture because I couldn't make enough money with landscape. It's hard to make money with landscape photography. And I started taking family photos, started meeting a lot of people, started doing weddings, doing a lot of weddings. And then I met my wife, and I brought my wife on as a photographer with me too. She's an artist. And the entrepreneur bug rubbed off on her, I think, a little bit. And she joined me, and we did that, and did that for many, many years as our full-time income until about 2019, which is when I started Scroll.
So did you have like digital experience outside of like digital photography? Was 2019 when you kind of started in the digital world, like the marketing side of things, or was it like promoting that business that helped you learn? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really understand what marketing was, but I realized I was doing it later on, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things. It's like, I felt like I was decent at social media. I grew my Instagram pretty large at the time that it was really easy to grow it. And I didn't really like put a word to it, what I was doing. I was just posting photos, interacting with people. And I'm realizing, years later, that I was marketing, right? And I felt like at the time I was trying to decide if I was going to go to school or not. I ended up going to several different schools, transferred around a lot, but ended up attending BYU and transferred to BYU Salt Lake to with a business major and also in marketing. So I took a lot of marketing classes, and that got me really interested because I was running my own business. I loved being creative. I liked advertising. This was in 2013, 2014, when I think marketing was becoming, well, one, it was easy because social was kind of really new and popping off, and it was still easy to do things. And then I transferred from BYU after I married my wife to LDS Business College at the time. It's now called Ensign College, but I transferred to LDS Business College, LDS BC, and they had a special degree at the time. It was really one of the most unique degrees really in the nation at the time, but it was in social media marketing. And they had adjunct professors that were marketing professionals that, you could learn from right then and there what was going on in the industry. You could start working with clients. This is for your associate's degree. This wasn't even for like a bachelor's or even a master's degree. Like, I was working with clients before I knew like how to be dangerous with it, and that really like ignited my spark for marketing, for social media, for, web design, for all the things that I eventually would get into with Scroll. And luckily I had a really good professor. His name was Tyson Riskus, and he was a professor that I feel like changed my entire life at LDSBC. he didn't happen to be too much older than me at the time. And he also had a lot of industry experience, and we got along really well. And he trusted me enough to ask me to be a business partner with him. And we ended up taking on some consulting clients. And this was that was really my first foray into doing digital marketing. And this was 2016, 2015 to 2017 when I worked with Tyson. And we worked with some amazing clients locally, like Criminally Fine Meat Company was one of them, Zumba Fit. We did a whole bunch of, awesome little projects. And my favorite by far was Criminally Fine Meat Company. And that was super fun. We built their influencer marketing program. We helped track it. This is in the heyday of like companies working with influencers, sending them product, like doing trips with influencers. Like that was so new at the time, and it was fun to be a part of that. And that kind of jumped me into then doing digital marketing for Everything Food Conference. And I got exposed to the food blogging world, which is a whole nother beast and a whole nother conversation. But that got me a lot of exposure to people that were making millions of dollars off of influencer marketing, off of social, off of their blog. And I got to learn a lot just by experiencing things as an intern and then kind of moving my way into a marketing management role within a period of 2 years. And we sold out the conference every single year I was there. It's a bummer it's not around still. COVID kind of really wrecked that of the event industry in general. It was hard for them to get going again, and the founders didn't really feel the need or want to start up post-COVID. So it's a bummer because it was kind of a one-of-a-kind conference that doesn't really exist anymore. But while it was around and in its heyday, we had an absolute blast. I think at the most we had like 650 attendees. And these weren't like small conferences. You'd pay thousands of dollars to come to these conferences and have these amazing food experiences, get to meet with influencers, get to interact with brands. And it was fun being a part of that conversation. And those two things plus the photography were the catalyst for Scroll and kind of my next big jump with Shane, when I started it with Shane in 2019.
How cool. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem like a little bit of a unicorn in the sense of, I feel like most people I've talked to who start their own business are in corporate America for a long time, and they're like, man, I just got to get out. I just got to do something different.
Yes.
And you kind of like you were in a little bit here and there, doing some jobs here and there, but for the most part, you've kind of been entrepreneurial most of your life, and it's just fit you well, right?
Yeah, I was just telling somebody the other day, I think the last time I had a W-2 was back. So I did have a W-2 right before I got married. I was working for Huntsman Cancer Institute, and it was a job that I loved, actually. It was a job that I really, really loved, but I had a very toxic boss, very toxic work environment. I loved caring for the patients that I worked for and with, and I loved the job, but it taught me a lot of like what not to do. And I think a lot of people, especially in corporate America, right? It's like that you learn a lot about how not to be, something, right? And you learn a lot of what not to do. You also learn about what makes a good boss, what makes a good, leader, what is actual leadership, right? You learn about all of those things. And I'm grateful for that time. But yeah, I haven't had a W-2 since like 2015. So 2016. Yeah. So it's been,
that's awesome.
It's been the ride. And even before that, like I was still, I had a W-2, but I always had a side gig.
Were your parents entrepreneurs? Like or what was it like in your friend group that was like, hey, we got to do something bigger, better? Like what was it growing up that made you be this way?
That's a great question. I think I think I have undiagnosed ADHD. I think it was just like you ask my parents, and it's funny because now that I have little girls and kids, like my parents are like, it's karma now. Like, how you were when you were a kid. Like I was just always going, always doing stuff, always picking things apart. I wanted to be an engineer for a long time because I loved Legos. I loved building things. I loved taking things apart and figuring out how to put it back together, And my trajectory was heading into engineering path or maybe medical path, because actually both my parents, my mother is a pediatric nurse practitioner and my father is a doctor of audiology. So the both of them are in the medical field. Were in the medical field for their entire careers. My mother now teaches at Weber State in the amazing nursing program that they have, and my dad is now consulting in a kind of post retirement career. And it's kind of interesting because I don't think what I think is my parents influenced me and my siblings to be very independent, and also like always trusted us to make good decisions. And also I think gave us a lot of support in what we wanted to do and pushed us to be better, be good, to do what we wanted to do in life. And somehow I ended up kind of falling into this entrepreneurial path after I learned how much math is involved in engineering and how much I hate math. So I think that's what really led me down this path of not being an engineer. But it's funny because I am colloquially called at the office either the encyclopedia or the problem solver, and I've always loved, no matter if it's marketing or working with my hands, because I love working in my yard, is problem solving, like taking things apart, putting them back together. I get a rush out of that. It's 100%. I get a high out of that, and I love it.
Yeah.
And so that entrepreneurship is pure problem solving 24/7.
Totally.
And marketing even more so, I feel like.
That's funny. You bring up you didn't want to be an engineer because of math. That made me remember, as a kid, I remember like, and this may age me a little bit, but I remember the internet was really just kind of starting to come out. And, and I was in high school and I was like, I'm bored. What do I do? And my dad's like, you can go on the internet and ask it any question you want. And he's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be an astronomer. And he goes, go to the internet and go find a bunch of astronomers and email them and ask them what they like about their jobs. So I did. I went in and I typed in astronomers or whatever, right? And I emailed a bunch of astronomers. And I was like, I'm looking at going into this, at a profession. What are the pros and the cons? And every single one of them responded back and said, don't do it. It's too much college for work for a government agency that's not going to pay you that much. And here are the classes that you're going to have to take. So unless you're interested in like all of these crazy mathematics classes and science classes and all of this, and like I wasn't very smart in high school, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll just buy a telescope. Maybe astronomy is not for me.
No, I love that. No, and it was very similar. Like I'm like, I'm just not interested in it. Like I just realized how like actually like I enjoy certain math, but like overall it just was not gonna be my thing, So ended up down a different path.
So what are you currently working on that excites you right now?
It's a great question. So right now, Scroll has been transitioning pretty majorly, pivoting who our ideal client is, and pivoting to who we work with. And that's been something that's been really exciting for us. It's scary too, because we have a really solid client base in the kind of the home service niche. We do have a lot of really strong e-commerce clients too, but we're transitioning to only serving other agencies. And that's been a really interesting transition for us. We've done white label marketing since 2020. We started focusing on agencies and helping them with their fulfillment, targeting agencies, them reaching out to us. Our pricing worked well and our services worked well for a lot of smaller, either consulting agencies or agencies that wanted to add a digital marketing aspect to what they were already doing.
Yeah.
And we built up a really solid client base that way. But transitioning to pivoting to working with other agencies, doing their lead generation, fixing their sales systems, helping them get a better offer that actually serves their client. That's what we're really getting into now. And it's been super fun the last couple of months. It's scary too, because we're taking hits in revenue in certain areas. And so we're building revenue in other areas. But that's what's really exciting for me right now, and for Shane too. A lot of what I say is going to be spoken for both Shane and I. Shane and I are, I feel like it's the, what's the term? I can't think of another term other than marriage, because that is the closest term that comes to what a business partner really is. And we're neck and neck, knee and knee all the time on stuff. And I couldn't do it without him, and I think vice versa. So I'm super grateful for him. But we're both very, very excited about where things are heading for us and our team. So
I think it's a smart pivot. Since I've started my agency just a couple of months ago, I've realized how many smaller agencies are out there that need the help and the fulfillment, right? Like right at the beginning, when there's just a few of you working, sometimes like you can do, for example, in SEO, you can do some on-page SEO by yourself real easy, but to do actually like authentic social media or authentic, link building or all of these other factors, oh man, one person, it's hard for one person to do it. And there's a lot of like 1 to 2 people agencies out there. And so I think it's a smart move. I think, you've proven yourself on how to build up an agency, and now you're teaching other people to do it. So you're just like a good leader duplicates other leaders and, helps them grow. And you're doing that with a business. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Eli. I appreciate that. We're super excited. And yes, we're also coming out with like courses too. That's been something that we've actually always wanted to do and build up and share how we've built, our agency, share how we've built our fulfillment engine, share how we've built our sales system. And it's been super fun. One, because it's fun to just document everything. And I would say the number one piece of advice for agency owners, you have to document. You got to document processes. You got to document for content purposes. Like, you have to document. If you don't, you're doing a disservice to your clients, to your team, to yourself in the long run, because you'll be worth less. And you'll be worth less if you don't document. So
tell me about your podcast. I watched a few episodes. I looked through some of the bigger people in there. Tell me what's exciting about the podcast. Tell me the process of getting that going. Like, why did you get it started? Where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, so it was started on a whim, 100%, because everybody was starting podcasts at the time. I feel like you know that, like you're in that boat. It's like everybody wants to start a podcast. So one, we started it because we felt like it would help force us to create content. One, in a meaningful way. Two, in a long form way, because you're able to take these long form pieces of content and break them down for social, right? And also create blogs, and it really becomes this kind of evergreen pillar content that you have forever. And it would force us to actually create content, because for forever we've grown our agency pretty much on 2 things. One, on paid advertising, and 2, on referrals. Like that, those 2 things have been our pillars of growth. That's it. We've never focused at all on organic social media, never focused on anything else other than really focusing hard on paid advertising, because we're good at it. And then 2, referral partnerships, because Shane and I have a great network and we've worked our network really well. And the agency side doing white label, the agencies become our natural salesmen, because they're selling and then onboarding with us. So as long as we nurture that relationship, they'll continue to onboard clients with us. Like, we have one client out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, that has over 100 clients with us. And the only way they have that many clients with us is because we've established a really good relationship with them, and they continue to onboard clients with us. So I think going back to your original question on the podcast front and why we started it, it really came down to, we knew we needed to invest in organic. We didn't know kind of what we were doing, and it's evolved over time. We had a good network, and it was, for whatever reason, easy to get people to say yes. And then it transitioned to this new studio that we have access to now at Davis Catalyst, which is really kind of taken our quality up a notch, taken the level of guests we can get up a notch. And now it's been super fun. I've done it pretty much exclusively myself the last year. Shane took a step back from the podcast to focus on our business and this pivot. It's been super fun for me. I've done almost everything myself outside of the editing and shooting. That's all handled by the studio we work with, but I source the guests. I do the outreach. I've had revolving interns. We have with the studio we work with, it's part of the school district. And so we have revolving interns that come and work for us every semester. And so all the interns have been fantastic because they do a lot of the research for me. They make good questions. They do all sorts of amazing stuff. Me and the last intern, we created a custom GPT. That is kind of our podcast GPT, where we can upload as much stuff as we can find about that guest that's incoming. And we can have it and the, whoever's kind of, prompting the custom GPT to be able to extract as many unique questions as possible, good questions. And then we're able to then take that, and post launch of the editing, we're able to take that transcript and take the video, send it back to that custom GPT, get like a blog out of it, get a cleaned up transcript, get a YouTube description, all sorts of fun stuff. So that's been really cool the last year to be able to have that and build that. And shout out to our interns, because they have been awesome from Davis Catalyst the last year or so.
That's way cool. In the last section, when we talk about what do you see coming in the future, I want to dig into a little bit more about AI and how you're using that.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, a lot of our listeners are either business owners that, maybe are a little bit smaller on the smaller end, where they can't afford to hire in-house. They can't really afford to hire an agency, or really don't know how to hire an agency yet. So they're doing a lot of it themselves. So if we jump into the tactical section of this and talk through, you have so much experience in marketing, having an agency all the way up through having a podcast and everything. What tactical advice would you give to them if they're sitting there listening and saying, like, man, I just got to better my business? What tactical advice would you give to them to help elevate themselves online?
I'd say it depends on where your revenue's at. And the reason why I say that is because there are certain tactical things that can help, in my opinion, can help jump you from maybe, let's say you're low six figures, you're making a couple $100,000 a year, to maybe jump you up to $1 million, to that 7-figure mark. Or maybe you're in that 7-figure mark, and maybe you're a home service business, and maybe it's just you. Maybe you're a plumber, for instance, and it's just you, and you're making roughly 7 figures a year, and you want to jump to maybe multiple 7 figures a year. So there's certain tactical things that I think, at least in my experience, you should do in certain times. I think when you're in that low 6-figure mark and you're looking to jump to 7 figures, the best thing you can possibly do in that time frame that's tactical is really hone in on your offering and your target market. And why I say that is because you really need to figure out who your best, ideal, top of market client is in order to serve them, no matter what you do. The reason why I say that is because that's where a good chunk of revenue is going to come from. That's probably where the best relationships are going to be built from. And ideally, that's where you can probably drive the best results for that particular person, whatever industry this is. So you really need to figure out and nail your product and service when you're in that 6-figure mark, okay? Once you've figured out your product and service tactically in terms of marketing, I would then invest in paid advertising. You can learn paid advertising on your own in probably a month or less. There's so much content out there on YouTube. You don't necessarily need to hire an agency unless you have the money or want to, but you can learn paid advertising for yourself in probably a month or so. And now that you've nailed your offering and your target market, all you need at that point is to risk some capital and invest in paid advertising to get more of your ideal target market client, right? And that will take you from the 6-figure mark into the 7-figure mark. And at that point, then you can be strategic. You could hire an agency. You probably have enough money at that point to bring someone in-house. I would outsource, and either outsource for as long as you can, as cheaply as you can, before you bring someone in-house. That's just my opinion. I think that's one thing that Shane and I look back on. We absolutely love our team, but I think we wish we would have stayed smaller longer and stayed leaner longer, just so that we would have the cash on hand in case something happened. And so those would be some tactical things. I can get into that a little bit more on paid advertising and how to go about it, but I think tactically, if you're under 7 figures, that's what I would do first. If you're over 7 figures, I would be strategic. Start looking for good partners. Start maybe partnering with an agency that can help you with one specific thing. Help you with your SEO, for instance, or help you with paid advertising specifically. Or maybe it's someone that needs to help you with your CRM and your sales process and making sure that all of that's really tight and solid and running smoothly, right? So there's, at that point, I would look at hiring an agency. Hopefully that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. If we dive in a little bit more to the how of the paid side and so let's say that I'm the plumber, right? And I've nailed my product offering. I know my audience, and it's time to jump into paid advertising. There's so many different platforms to do paid advertising. How do I know as a plumber, where should I start and where do I because I don't want to learn Google if Facebook is going to be the best one for me. Like, how do I know which direction to go first there?
That's a great question. We have, at least for home service, we feel like there's 2 places that perform consistently well and get the best leads. One is, and this is relatively new within the last year or 2 years, is Google Local Services. Google Local Services, or Google Guaranteed, is a new ad platform that Google has come up with. You may see it when you search on Google for services or home services. You'll see a little Google Guaranteed badge next to someone's name. What that means is that Google has vetted that person. So as a plumber, you would have to submit your insurance information. You'd have to submit your licensure. You'd have to submit all of these qualifications for Google to put that Google Guaranteed badge on your name. And then after that, what Google Guaranteed and Google Local Services becomes is a pay per lead gen service. So most of these plumbers, electricians, contractors, home service guys, they're already paying for leads with like Angie's List, Home Advisor, like all these other places. But what Google does is it's giving you the direct source. It's giving you either calls, it's 90% of it's calls or messages in, and people looking for your service, and you're only paying for legitimate leads. So they call, record, and at the end of the month, you can then, if there's leads that are bad or they're not legitimate, you can then request a refund for those leads, and they'll give it to you. Unlike Angie's List or Thumbtack or whatever, they won't. You just pay to get the lead. It doesn't matter if it's bad or not. So that's the one awesome thing with Google Guaranteed that we will set up for every home service client of ours, and it kills it. So learning Google Local Services is a great place to start, especially if you're in that 6-figure mark, because it's a relatively low investment, like all considering. And it's really a turn on and turn off mechanism. There's not a lot to learn. It's not like Google search ads where there's a ton of keyword research. There's like target, like all this stuff. It's really pick your keywords in your services, pick your service area, turn it on, and it runs. That's it.
Nice.
So it's pretty awesome. So I would recommend Google Local Services. And then the second place I'd recommend is Meta. So advertising, Facebook and Instagram. The reason why is because the cost per lead is pretty low. The CPMs are still relatively okay, all considering, even with the TikTok fiasco and TikTok stuff going on right now. The reason why, again, with Facebook is because it's targetable. You can target very specifically, especially if you're in a metro area. And the only piece that makes it difficult is getting good creative. So that's where you may want to hire a videographer. You may want to hire a creator to make something funny, to make something comical, to like really stop people and actually watch your ad. Shane and I were, well, not me. Shane was talking the other day to one of our local plumber clients and HVAC clients, and he was like, I think you should just like go out by like the condenser unit outside and just like sit down with like a little mic and just like be kind of sensual with it and talking about, oh, we can like, get your AC going and all this stuff. But here's the thing, like that stuff sells. That stuff works. It stops the scroll, And so we were just kind of joking, but we're actually going to go shoot that next week. So you'll probably see, if you're in Utah, you'll probably see some ads soon for a client of ours. But
for sensual plumbing.
just kind of making fun, poking fun at it.
Yeah. On that note, have you seen the fail ads that have come out recently?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So those are the best. Yeah, I saw one last night. So I'm going to Podcast Summit next week, and I keep getting ads for Podcast Summit. And this one was, there was a motorcycle riding, and he hit just a pothole, and just end over end, and then the Podcast Summit guy just like does a cartwheel and jumps up and says something about it. Like those are super creative.
There's like several dealerships that are in Texas that have gone like super viral for using that method. Really, it's like a meme ad, I guess, is what it is. So you got these meme clips and meme videos that they're playing off of, and they're doing it organically. Some are paid if they can get license for it. But it's hilarious, and it definitely stops the scroll, gets you to watch it. But stuff like that, it works. Like people, the humor is universal. And I had Jay Davis, he's the founder of Creatively, on Scroll Sessions, and Shane and I talked with him pretty extensively about advertising creativity, because they do a lot of also humorous advertising, very similar to Harmon Brothers and stuff like that. And what he said, I think stuck with me, and humor is it's a universal emotion, right? And it also is a really great way, or is a gateway emotion to other emotions. So you can use humor, and not necessarily, I mean, this is probably a bad word, but it manipulates that interaction to be positive, and for you to feel positive about that business, and hopefully make some kind of, either a purchase or decision on a service, or a call to action, or visit their page or whatever. But humor is that gateway emotion in order to influence someone. So
yeah, I love it. Such good advice. Any other advice or tips that you have?
Oh man, I think my other piece of advice is really one, especially for business partners. I think if you're going to get a business partner, make sure it is someone that, one, is really like an actual partner in real life. It's something that I'm very lucky with Shane on, is that we are friends. We're also business partners at the end of the day, and we have different opinions. We have disagreements sometimes, but it all comes down to we're able to work it out, move forward. And also it's a good way to set the tone for the relationship, especially if you're yin and yang, and it definitely is that case with me and Shane, and it works very, very well. So I think my first piece of advice is be careful who you go to business with, and make sure you choose them wisely, and make sure they're a good partner for you. Secondly, I think make your investments in marketing wisely. I think nowadays there's so much to do. Like literally, there is so much to do, and there's always some new thing. There's, especially looking in the future with AI and how fast things are moving, there's always something to do. And so pick like maximum 3 channels that you want to own and be really, really good at, and stick to those and nail those. And once you're done mastering, nailing those, keep going and keep doing those things, and then bring somebody in that can then be strategic in another area. That's kind of what we're doing now. We focused heavily on paid and referrals. Now we're focusing on organic, and we're building our brand a little bit more locally and all of those things. And so that's probably a second piece of advice that I would give new business owners, especially those that feel like there's so much to do, and there is, and there always will be. That's the problem. So pick 3.
It's never ending.
3 things that you feel like you're going to be really good at, and stick with those and nail them, and then move on. Right.
And depending on how big your team is, if it's just you, maybe start with one, and then grow to more. Right. But you're right. Like there's email, there's SMS, there's social media, and within social media, there's 15 different platforms, and
but every platform has its own rules and its own tactics and its own timing and its own kind of content that works better, right? So like you need to pick 3 and be really good at those, and then you can move on from there.
Yeah, Great advice. Great advice. Where do you see the future of digital going?
Oh man, I think it's going to I think it's going in two directions. And what I mean by that is one, I think people that are, this is going to sound maybe bad, but people who are like mediocre or bad at marketing are probably going to get pushed out most likely because AI is going to definitely replace the mediocre and bad marketers. It just will. And then people that utilize AI are going to accelerate quicker, faster than anyone else who doesn't. Now, I say that with a grain of salt because we also are seeing a lot of companies coming out and saying, we will never use AI. We will always be, this and that. And I also think that's a very strategic play that sets you out in the market, stands you apart from everybody else because everybody is using AI. So I think there's a place for both. I think as AI is changing digital marketing, us as the human race, we're also realizing that there's things that are innately human that can never be replaced by AI. And one of which is, original creativity. And so I think the future is using AI to help you be faster, maybe more efficient, but becoming more human and more creative and being able to somehow blend the two to be a better marketer and also have, better marketing for your business or the businesses that you work with. That's where I think things are going. And I hope that's the case. I hope we don't see, in 10 years, mass layoffs from AI. I hope we don't see like things that, come in and really, I think, destroy what has been so good for so long. So anyways, it's going to be interesting. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that we do use AI to better the world as opposed to scam the world. I know there's lots of potentials to scam people using AI, and I'm a little bit worried about that as well. But from a marketing standpoint, I think there's a lot of benefits to using it to help in the planning and the strategy, and there's a lot of benefits in that regard for sure.
Totally.
So you said that you built out an actual GPT for the podcast.
Yeah.
Walk me through, what does that look like? Like, how do you get that started and how do you optimize that to make it like work for you? And the reason I'm asking this, because I think a lot of businesses could do the same thing, whether you have a podcast or not. I think even the, the dentist, doctor, lawyer, plumber could create their own GPT to benefit themselves. So walk us through those steps. What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples because we've built many custom GPTs for us. I'll give you one example of using one for client and for writing and for understanding voice. So we built a custom GPT for an epoxy manufacturer. They're a wholesale manufacturer. So they sell their epoxy to like the local epoxy guy that then goes and epoxies your garage, right? So one, it's very technical. They're selling something that is pretty technical to a technical audience. So we are not epoxy people, but we need to understand epoxy. And we also need to understand all the things. So what we did was we took all of their white papers, we took a copy of their entire website, a copy of all of their blogs, pretty much anything we could get our hands on, and we loaded it up into ChatGPT with a custom GPT that we created. Now the custom GPT had a prompt it's several paragraphs long, but it's basically being very specific, asking very specific questions, laying out a template for us to use, and giving a good prompt so that there can be a back and forth conversation with the bot itself to be able to get good content. And that was how we were able to scale his content very quickly and authentically, and also be able to ask it questions without having to ask our client questions.
Smart.
And so it became a really good efficiency tool for us. So we didn't have to go book meetings all the time. And we could get, 80, 90% there, send it over after our writers would go through it, send it to the client, and he'd probably have some iterations or a little changes, but it was like 90% there because we had done all of the legwork, upfront work in order to do that. So that was one example. So for a lot of our larger clients, we're creating these custom GPTs in-house for us to use for that client in particular. So that's one case. Another use case is I'm doing a lot of this because I'm like the tech nerd slash I don't know, go-to problem solver guy for this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm the one that ends up building them. But another use case is I built a GPT for our onboarding. So when we had an onboarding form that would come in, I have an automation that would take that onboarding form and digest all the information in it, understand the client a little bit more, kind of do some research, and spit out this, 10-page document on their ideal client profile, on some potential scripts to use for ads, some potential keywords to target for SEO, understanding that client a lot more and a lot quicker than having, 12 people join the onboarding call that don't necessarily need to be there. We can have this brief document that's created within minutes of that onboarding form being filled out, that's sent to the whole team that they can use to digest and break down from there. So that was one of the other use cases for kind of ChatGPT, OpenAI. Maybe the third and last use case, we had, this is kind of a mixture of OpenAI and Zapier. So you can use Zapier. And if you don't know what Zapier or make.com are, they're basically no code API tools that connect one app or automate a task or automate something with another app. And so, for instance, we have this onboarding automation for our team that anytime a client pays our retainer for this new agency program, it's going to check that they've paid. It's going to create a Slack channel. It's going to add everybody to that Slack channel. It's going to send a message to that channel, inviting everybody to the channel. It'll then create their client drive that needs to be created. It'll add everybody to that client drive. It's going to change the sharing settings to make sure it's public. And then it'll copy our template and all the templates. So there's like 4 or 5 documents that it's going to copy, rename, put the client's name in those templates, move them into the client drive, and do that all within a matter of a minute, where that would normally take 30 minutes to do manually, probably.
Yeah.
So that's another example that we've been able to do. And the ramifications of some of this stuff are huge and wide ranging, not only in just marketing and agencies, but definitely for a dentist or a plumber. There's so much that could be created to take a lot of that just paperwork filling, and just make that not a thing anymore. Make all the paperwork digital, have the forms automated. There's so much cool stuff that you could do. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do within the next year is build this kind of automation piece into our offer, because we're pretty good at doing it for ourselves and our clients. And we want to have it as a piece that we can come into an agency or come into another business and say, hey, we're going to do all of this custom automation and we're going to save you X amount of money and X amount of time, right? And that's kind of the goal within the next year or two, is another offering to the marketing side of things. So
smart. It's so powerful, and that kind of stuff excites me about the future. And I've thought about building my own GPT, and now hearing you talk about it, I'm like, okay, I definitely have to go and do this.
Here's the thing: it's not that difficult. People either make it more complex than it needs to be, or they don't realize that ChatGPT itself there's a bot you can use to build your own custom GPT. That's built in. When you go and create one, there's a bot that you're talking to, creating it with you, asking you a bunch of questions, and then you can go customize the prompt and do everything else yourself if you want. But man, it is a lot easier than people, I think, make it seem. It's definitely time consuming though. And I think that's a lot of the piece of where people want to outsource that, because it's very time consuming and it can break. So it's the monitoring of that, making sure it's all going good and stuff, but it's been a game changer for us. I feel no doubt about it.
Still awesome. That's way cool. Man, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you taking the time to jump on and chat with us today. At the end of every podcast, I have 2 different questions. So the first one is, if you could go back and give advice to your younger self, what would that be?
So the advice I would give my younger self is not be too hard on oneself. The sun rises tomorrow. I've always been one to overthink things, to be really, I don't know what it is. I feel like just compare myself to others. I still do it. There's still imposter syndrome, and that's very real. I think I'll always struggle with that. I don't know if I'll ever not. But I think just to be less hard on yourself is a huge piece of advice I would give my younger self. As an early photographer in the heydays of Instagram, it was very easy to compare one's work to someone else's, or this other trip that someone got, or this other deal that someone landed. And it was so difficult that there was a period of like 1 to 2 years where I just like, I'm done with social. Like I'm not, like it's just bad for my own mental health to be on it. And even though I work in it and I work with our clients on it, and so there was a period of time where, it just wasn't like that. So that's the advice that I would give my my younger self, no doubt about it.
That's great advice. And I mean, you say you still go through it now. So like, I've also heard the question flipped all the way up to like, hey, let's say you're like 75 now. What would you give your advice to yourself now, being old? And my guess is it's probably the same.
Yeah, it's probably the same, and I think one is also be more aware of others. I think I sometimes am less aware of others, or maybe how my choices or the things that I do affect other people, and I think I'm much better than I used to be at that. I was always definitely a type A personality, push forward, move forward, no holds barred, just do it, burn the bridges. And also you need to have a side that says like, yeah, this affects people. This also affects me in other ways, affects my future, affects my family. And I'm much more aware of that now. And that still, I feel like good applicable advice. So
yeah, one of my favorite interview questions when I worked in corporate America was, how are you most commonly misunderstood?
Interesting. That'll show people's colors.
Yeah, it really does. And it helps them understand, just like you're understanding right now. I used to be that way. I realized I was that way. I needed to change, especially starting your own business, your own company, and being a leader. You have to realize how it impacts other people,
Totally,
as well as yourself. So very, very smart. What books, podcasts, or leaders currently inspire you?
Oh, good question. So the last like 2 years, I've been like obsessed with a couple of different people, but I think one of my, well, I'll come back to the people in just a second. One of my favorite books I read recently is Five Dysfunctions of a Team. I think this is really good to read, and I think it's by I'm just gonna look it up. It's it's Patrick Lencioni. I can remember how to pronounce. I think it's Lencioni is how you pronounce his last name. But I read that a couple months ago, and it is an amazing book if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a people leader, if you're leading a team, just to break down what makes a good team, what makes a bad team, and really how to build trust amongst people and how to keep that trust. That's huge. And building psychological safety, building those things that are going to lead the team to do better, for you to be better. It's huge at the end of the day, especially if you plan on building a team. Like if you don't plan being on, a solopreneur forever, you're going to have to work with people, even if you are a solopreneur. So it's just a good way to spot those toxic things, cut them out, like build better trust, build better teams. It's an awesome, awesome book. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's great.
It's been a while, but I have read it, and I remember I did like it. Yeah.
So I'm pulling it up on the screen here. He starts with build trust, and then that's the foundation. Trust is the foundation of everything. Second is resolving conflict. Third is then committing to that resolution and trust. And then fourth is holding each other accountable. And then the very top is focus on results. And that's kind of the 5 main pillars. Now there's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And then there's also the 5, positive or 5 positive functions of a team that he goes through too. But those are great. So that's one of my favorite books that I've read recently. 2 people that have inspired me are Alex and Leah Hormozi. I don't know if you know the Hormozi clan.
Absolutely.
But they've been huge, I think, inspirations to both Shane and I the last 2 years. And we love what they're doing. We love their content that they put out. I've never seen anyone give as much as Alex in terms of free content and unbelievably transformational content, other than maybe like Tony Robbins or something. But I feel
For
like
sure,
Alex, he's in that kind of next level category of give, same, him and Gary Vaynerchuk are very much of the, jab, right hook kind of thing.
Yeah,
And they
absolutely.
both give, and it's worked out very well for them. So that's been inspiring to both Shane and I, not only from a business and content perspective, but also from just a marketing perspective. The way they like $100 million offers and 100 million leads from Alex Hormozi are both amazing books. If you're a marketer, if you do lead gen, those books will absolutely change the way you do things in a positive way. And we've built a lot of our agency accelerator program that we've launched based on some of those principles, along with principles that Russell Brunson and others talk about too. But they've changed the course of our agency, and we're sharing what we've learned with others through this agency accelerator program. So
that's awesome. Were you on the call when he launched his last book?
Yep. It's pretty awesome, man. I mean, he's like, and I'm going to give away this and this and this
and this.
and it's
and
for
the cost
free.
is for free. Yeah, I know. I bought a couple of those books. I've handed them out to a couple of friends and stuff, but man, it just goes to show, like, you don't have to be a jerk to be successful, right? Like, he seems so nice and giving, and just like you said, like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and those guys, they just give so much.
Yeah, totally. And they make a lot of money too, it's just that seems to come when you do give, but you also have to give something of value, and they talk a lot about that. And both it's interesting because like him and his wife Leah, they're both very very giving. Leah really runs the business end, like she is the boss, so to speak, and Alex is the free-willed, long-haired child of that relationship, and it's kind of fun to watch. So anyways, they've been inspiring. So I think those two people in that book have been game changers for me personally the last couple of months. So
that's awesome. Well, Dan, how can people get in touch with you if they want to after this podcast?
Yeah, best place to find me personally, LinkedIn. You can type in Dan Page or Daniel Page. I'll show up. Scroll sessions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Our website, joinscroll.com. And then if you want to learn more about our agency accelerator program, scrollagencyaccelerator.com is the last place to go. So
nice. Okay, so everybody watching on YouTube, I'll put that up on the screen so they can see that, and then I'll put it in the show notes for everybody who's just listening so they can get in touch with you.
Cool. Eli, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been fun to chat with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a busy life and a busy schedule, and it's I'll launch this on a Tuesday, but for everyone listening, it's a Friday afternoon, time to go home, and you're taking time away to give us your insights. So,
and we have a 4-day work week, so I'm not even actually working today. This just happened to be a time that I had available, and ended up working out because no one's in the office. So I'm working out of my office in Kaysville, and no one's here because we have a 4-day work week. So, anyways,
above and beyond. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I really do. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to getting to know you a little bit more since we're here local, and I'll see you at some more events, and appreciate you taking the time. And to everyone else listening out there, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, Eli.
Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.